Enough of these disasters. No, actually, we're going to talk about disasters. We're going to talk disaster psychology. Are you mentally prepared for the big one? Should you even worry about the big one? We'll find out coming up Cron 4 News Weekend. You know, it wasn't that long ago, folks. In fact, the anniversary is coming up for the Loma Prieta earthquake. Now, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about the next earthquake, the one that is yet to come. At least most of us don't. On the other hand, our next guest spends a fair amount of time thinking about it. In fact, you might say he wears it on his sleeve, or at least on his shirt. Let me introduce you at the very top of this tie to Matt Davis. He's a professor of psychology at Dominican University of California, and they call him disaster man on campus. He travels all over the world studying
disasters,
and
mostly volcanoes and earthquakes, but more the psychological aspect of them, how people perceive their risk, how can we motivate people to get better prepared, that type of thing.
So you've found that obviously physical preparation, but also mental preparation can equate to survival in many cases.
Absolutely. What we find is that people who bounce back more quickly after a disaster tend to be the ones that had prepared beforehand. And of course, there's the obvious that if you have food and water, you know what to do when a disaster strikes, you're much more likely to survive it and come through unharmed.
What's the mental preparation involved? Like, what should I be doing today to help me get through something like this?
To really kind of, I would say, to make a list of the things that you need to accomplish to really be prepared, and then do them. And you know, don't look at it as a Herculean task.
Why haven't I done? Am I in denial? Why haven't I done them already?
It's not really denial, and a lot of people seem to think that's what's going on with us, that we have our head in the sand. But what it really comes down to is a variable we call salience. And basically, we have a whole lot on our plate on the front burner. So we're trying to get to work, we're trying to afford to buy our groceries. There are a lot of everyday problems that affect us. When you actually ask people, do you think there'll be an earthquake? People usually say, absolutely, and they do think it's going to be serious for them. But there's this kind of, you know, I have other things to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I'll get to it down the road.
After a disaster, immediately after a disaster, people go into shock, I guess? Is that the first thing that happens?
Shock to some extent, yeah. It's a fairly common reaction, although a lot of people kind of go into hyperdrive and start doing altruistic behavior. You know, the heroism that we see in things like the Loma Prieta earthquake, where people were crawling under the freeways trying to rescue people from their cars. So altruism is really, really a common reaction. People band together, people try to help one another out. Some people do experience that kind of shock and disbelief, but that is usually fairly temporary.
But if you lose your home, I mean, it's just unimaginable, right?
Absolutely. Or a loved one, or you're injured, then that's of course going to have a much more profound effect on you psychologically. And
so, one piece of advice from Disaster Man is what? Make a list today.
Make a list
right
and prepare. Do things. Buy a case of water today and put it in your car, so that you know that wherever your car is, you've got water for at least, you know, a few days. Okay. Little things at a time.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Matthew Davis.
Thank you.
Dominican University. Thanks. We appreciate it, and we trust that we will never need any of this advice, but of course we all know we will. Marty, Isabel?
Yeah, so true. Thank you, Henry.